Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome to your happy February 15th. Yeah, I know everyone posted videos on Valentine's Day. And you're thinking, girl, why are you thinking of doing this on the day after Valentine's Day? Because this is a day when people are going to need this video more than Valentine's Day. I mean, blah, 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 self-love. You know the drill. Okay, I'm not even going there. You heard enough of that. But let's talk about this day. Because some of you had a lapse yesterday. There's one thing we know about people who are narcissistic and antagonistic. They love anniversary dates as a chance to hoover, right? Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, and you got it, Valentine's Day. And so some of you did your good work, you've done your healing work, you're sitting at home, you're strong, and boom, ping, you get that little DM or that text. Maybe you thought you'd blocked it everywhere, and in it comes on Valentine's Day. And on those days, we're sort of caught a little off guard too. Isn't it funny? Like, isn't any holiday or any day, birthday, anything just an ordinary day, but there's something that feels a little hazy in our heads. And those sentimental reach outs, those blasts from the past, have all this power that takes us over on those days. So some of you got hoovered yesterday, and that's okay. Let's practice self-forgiveness. It happens. It happens. It happens on Valentine's Day. So now, how do you pivot out of the hoover if you got sucked back into something on Valentine's Day? Or if you really, really felt like you had come a long way in setting better boundaries, gray rocking, no contact, or maybe even thinking about potentially getting out of an unhealthy relationship, and Valentine's Day might have set you back. A day doesn't change anything. And so I want to remind all of you on this day after Valentine's Day that there are some things you can do to get yourself back on track. Number one, this is just a lapse. So let's say you responded to that hoovery text, whether it's been a week or 10 years since you've been in a given narcissistic relationship. You don't have to keep responding. You can dial down to one-word responses. You don't have to say, like, let's say you agreed to, somebody wants to, let's go get a cup of coffee or something. You don't have to do it. I think one of the most difficult parts of narcissistic relationships is that people really, after a certain point, are really no longer really consenting to what's happening in that relationship. They're just sort of caught up in this big, confusing mess where you're just sort of going along to keep the relationship going. And so you, once again, you might have just responded in that way, just seeing that name in your inbox. Yeah, sure, I'll see you for a coffee. You might even feel that sense of, if I don't say yes, then I'm going to feel guilty. Or if I don't say yes, that's not very nice. All the old narratives. Let it breathe. Just because you responded to that Hoover text doesn't mean you're into anything. And you can always either block it again or just say, no, I can't, or you take care of you. If you feel as though you're in a relationship and you really felt like a lot of your boundaries came down, you maybe had one too many glasses of champagne on Valentine's Day and then started having bigger conversations and found yourself caught in the same old gaslighty, manipulating, word salady, confusing mess as always. View it as a wake-up call. I think sometimes people, even though they watch all the content, they read all the books, they follow all the socials on all of this narcissism stuff, they still keep testing the limits of the relationship. And here on February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, I want to normalize that for you. I think the testing limits is a chance for you to almost learn the tolerances of this relationship. You kind of keep getting yourself burned a few more times to say, okay, every time I put my hand near the tiger, it keeps biting me. And at some point, you're going to recognize, like, yeah, no, I'm not going to put my hand in that cage anymore. That's a personal journey. And for some people, they've got to test those limits a few times. And maybe yesterday, you fell into that it's Valentine's Day, let's have a nice chat kind of thing, and it blew up in your face. So I absolutely abhor Valentine's Day. And what I dislike about it so much is that it pathologizes people for not being in relationships, as though that there's something not quite right about someone who's not in a close relationship and yet living very rich lives otherwise. I don't like it because it destabilizes survivors of narcissistic abuse, people who already do struggle with some level of sort of relationship confusion, and days like this really, really throw them off. But now that you're coming out of the haze of it, and it'll be 365 days again before you have to deal with the sort of societally mandated shaming of people not in relationships, I want you to sort of dust off. If it was a day that threw you off balance, the best path forward to healing after you've had any kind of a lapse is to say, okay, I'm only human, and this is something I'm still very vulnerable to, and this relationship really shaped me and hurt me, and I can come back from that. I think that's something I want you to remember in the haze after Valentine's Day. My team and I sat down and we were all ready to do the usual Valentine's Day video. I sat in my bed for a long time and I stared at the ceiling and said, I have nothing to say about Valentine's Day. And so I actually really did a deeper dive and I thought, what has this ever really meant to me? And I went back to childhood, interestingly. And as a child, I loved Valentine's Day. I loved it. I counted the days. So I had to think, what the heck was going on, girl, that you loved Valentine's Day as a kid? And in my school, and I went to elementary school mostly in the 1970s, we would take a brown paper lunch bag and we would decorate the lunch bag in school, usually with paper doilies and hearts we'd cut out of paper. Sometimes if we were really good kids, we'd get some glitter. We'd decorate said bag and either put it on our desk and tape it to our desk. Then, in the week before Valentine's Day or so, our parents must have taken us to the store and we'd purchase the Valentines and address them to our classmates. The really innovative kids made their own. I tended to go store-bought. And then we would address the Valentines to each child in the class and write their name and write our name and make sure we had one for every child, and there was one always in the box for the teacher, and have one for the teacher. And on the morning of Valentine's Day, we'd go to school, and we'd go from desk to desk and drop our Valentines in everyone's bags. At the end of the day, either at school, usually we'd go home, often we'd go home, we'd get to take the bag of Valentines home and read them. Now, nobody loved each other, right? It was an absolute, I guess, insincerity in a way that you just did the task because it was something to do. But when I tell you how much I cherished each of those Valentines, I'd line them up on my bed, I'd tape them to pieces of paper, I'd turn them into collages. I treasured those Valentines from kids who actually really didn't like me, honestly. And it really made me wonder, what was it about that process? Was it the giving? Was it the getting? Was it the novelty? And when I really thought about it, I think it was a process of reciprocity. On that one day, I knew I would be able to put something out, the store-bought card. I would get one back, and I'd get this sort of cherished moment to look at all these pretty red and yellow and different kinds of cards, and then play with them. And that made me wonder really about adult relationships, especially in the wake of Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is done, but the word that really stuck out to me is what my childhood Valentine's Days meant to me in elementary school was reciprocity. That idea that I would give something and I would get something back. And that's precisely what's missing in the narcissistic relationship. Now, I no longer do that. I don't send anyone a Valentine, even though I have a person in my life. In fact, I think he'd probably drop dead of a heart attack if he opened the mailbox and found a Valentine's card from me. My sister, bless her heart, every year gives me a 2-pound box of chocolates, which is sort of one of our great moments of the year of who's going to get each other the better box of chocolates. And the traditions then have become steeped in something sort of silly. And honestly, with me and Sis, what is it? The 2-pound box of chocolate that her and I can each count on. So as we move out of the haze of Valentine's Day, I want you to think about that idea of reciprocity, of relationships as actually being balanced spaces. In my little girl mind, it was, I give you a card, you give me a card. Obviously, in adult life, it's a heck of a lot more than that. It's the idea that something comes back and forth in a relationship. It's a give, it's a take, but it happens organically. And it doesn't just happen one damn time a year. So, for those of you who took the hits on Valentine's Day, I want you to go into this next year thinking about reciprocity, about the give and take of a human relationship, maybe about a little girl sitting on a bed and organizing those Valentines, her reminder of reciprocity that came once a year, something that we as adults need to internalize and recognize, that we need to value ourselves enough to build that into our lives, not just on Valentine's Day, not just on the day after Valentine's Day, but 365 days a year. So happy day after Valentine's Day. And guess what? The chocolates are 50% off now. So go and have a ball. Thanks again.